بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف خلق الله أجمعين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. I've been asked about the issue of spousal rape and the Western laws around that, and is there any ruling in Islam that would allow the prosecution of a husband for having forced himself upon his wife with an act of intimacy that she objected to. The issue is a new issue. The very concept of spousal rape is something, even in Western legal standards, is identified clearly as a new issue. Many states, as you know, the laws of marriage, divorce, and the detailed laws of those matters in American law is governed by state. It's legislated by state, and it's based on the state legislations of each and every state individually about what's acceptable and what's not acceptable in these matters. So when I say that in Western law it is something new, you find states just now, 2013, 2010, 1996, recent years, just now beginning to introduce this concept of spousal rape and a man not being exempted from prosecution on a rape charge because he has a marriage contract with the rape victim. And subhanallah, we need to be critical of Western culture. We need to be critical of the Western agenda, the satanic agenda that is set in place by those who wish to destroy the very family structure. The people of all religions even recognize that. The people of different wholesome lifestyles other than Islam, people who wish to preserve old-fashioned customs and good morality without being able to recognize the essential need for tawheed, all of those people, they all recognize that this, that modern Western culture from so many different angles is aimed at taking apart, dismantling the family structure from every possible angle. From the most important angle that the Western culture dismantles the family structure is the issue of marriage. Of course, the issue goes on and on when you talk about now the establishment of homosexual marriages, when you talk about the issue of marriages, common law marriages, where people don't even have a contract, they just have lived together long enough that they become known as married. And marriage now goes from a very important commitment that a family is built upon, and thus a society is built upon. It goes from that, from a very wholesome commitment with obligations on both sides that are distinct and different, meaning on the side of the husband and the side of the wife. It goes from that to being now what it has become in many people's minds is just an advantage for taxpayers to pay less taxes. So they marry someone even when they're not interested in marriage or intimacy or anything, because it is advantageous from the angle of filing for tax returns. And so the whole concept of marriage has gone from the wholesome way in which a family begins to be built, and that the society in essence becomes wholesome through the structure of a family. It now turns into no meaning left for the family, no meaning left to this marriage, no meaning really. The meaning of the marriage is lost to people now as they move into separating church from state, meaning they separate their religious laws from their governmental laws, from their misguided ways, is that they wish to say that any meaning to a marriage contract that comes from a religious basis is false and unacceptable in American law. And marriages must be understood in light of, without any consideration given to any religious teachings, which essentially, subhanAllah, takes away the very meaning of a marriage. A marriage is a religious concept. It is a concept of a person committing himself into a contract to fulfill obligations, the rights of another person. And it has a meaning of of a person engaging in a commitment. It has the meaning of being backed in laws that have been sent down by the Creator, laws that have been initiated by the Creator for the creation in their best interests. But in their westernized ideas, no religion can play a part in legislation. No religion can be the basis for a legislation. So now they go back and they question the most given, the most accepted, the most universally accepted ideas like marriage. And they question what is the meaning of marriage. And when someone says the meaning of marriage has always been understood since biblical times, as they would say, as a man going into a contract with a woman, the man accepts the obligations of providing for the woman and taking care of her financially as it relates to her housing, her maintenance in general, and all of her needs. And the woman is required to comply with his requests for intimacy. And this is the very essential nature of the contract throughout history. Now the marriage no longer has this understanding of a contract. Now people, when they review their laws, they're saying traditionally marriage was viewed as a quote-unquote contract, for establishing rights between two people. Now they wish to review the very concept of what marriage means. All of this gets us back to the point of spousal rape, that the very essence of the contract is the woman is saying, I enter this contract giving myself over to a man, right, in obedience to this man in all things that are permissible, to be under his care, to offer myself to him intimately when he wishes, and he takes care of me on his side of the contract with maintenance, with defense, and with caretaking, and so on. And it is a contract that is known that love, mawadda, and rahmah, compassion, sprouts out of this wholesome contract. Now this whole concept has just now been totally uprooted. And now you have a man marrying another man and a woman marrying another woman. When a man and a woman marry, or any two people marry, no matter what their gender now, there is no indication of one of them being the leader of a household. That's been stripped away. The feminist movement has led to women believing that they are entering into a 50-50 partnership with a man. And so households based on these kinds of marriages are households of turmoil with no decision maker in charge. And this is something necessarily known, that any time two people come together and there is no decision maker, the one who has the final say, then they will go on arguing and they will go on in turmoil to no end. This has become the norm now with marriages, that even amongst the Muslims, subhanallah, you find women who say, prove to me that I have to obey my husband. Subhanallah, prove to me that I have to obey my husband. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. I've given a talk on the topic for the length of 1 hour with dozens of narrations from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam indicating the obligation of a woman to obey her husband. That can be reviewed, and there's no need to repeat any of that at this time. But this brings us to the point of this answer, that a man is not to be charged with rape, and a man is not accountable for rape if it's related to someone that he has a contract with, meaning a spouse that he has a contract with. He is not to be considered a rapist for having intercourse with his wife if she did not want to. There is an important issue I need to talk about, but I need to get us past this issue of the Western idea of spousal rape. That is a new idea even for them. They have recently introduced this, and they would never consider charging a husband with raping his wife because of the presence of a marriage contract. That's traditional, and they acknowledge that, and legal theorists are now discussing this problem in Western law. So in Islam, the contract is clear. The marriage contract has a meaning. The woman does not have a right to forbid her husband from having intercourse with her in the marriage contract. And then I come to now an exception, and that is if the woman is having an issue medically, physically, maybe even psychologically, she has an issue that it is harmful to her to have intercourse at this time because of this issue, whether it is physical pain, whether it is something that is causing her real harm. So in this case, before I even talk about the ruling, what is a husband doing harming his wife? What is a husband doing and he doesn't care about the feelings of his wife? Rather, Muslim men are to be romantic, they are to be caring and compassionate with their wives, and they are to be understanding with their wives. These are their partners that they build a family with. They are not to be selfish and not give consideration to the state of the woman, her current mental state, her current psychological state, these kind of things. But a man is to care for this woman, a man is to care for his wife and consider her feelings. And that's the way a believer is. The closer you get to the believer, the more good treatment you see from him if he's a true believer. When a person is kind and generous, the spouse should be able to confirm that this person is kind and generous, because they should see the kindness and generosity of this person from a much more closer viewpoint than anyone else. Right? So a good man cares about the Muslims around him. A good Muslim man cares about the Muslims that he is in contact with in a general way. So therefore, a Muslim man cares about the condition of his wife more than the rest of the people, because he's closer in more of a direct relationship with this woman than anyone else. So she has more of a right to his kind treatment, to his compassion, and to his lenience than anyone else that he deals with. This may be overlooked by some people who are looking at the mere technical side of, well, he has a right to intercourse because of a marriage contract. We'd like to not lose track of this idea. So if a woman is sick, physically ill, if a woman is mentally or psychologically ill, and this act, the act of intimacy, is something that's going to increase her in illness or prolong her illness or cause her harm or suffering of some type, then this is not permissible for the man in this case to do something that is involving harm. La darara wa la dirar. There is no harm in Islam, and there is no reciprocation of that harm. So under this principle, the principle of la darar, raf al-darar and raf al-haraj, we are not to harm our spouses, we are not to physically harm them. So in this case, it's not allowed. However, is it rape? Is it going to be classified as rape, like a man raped a person that is of no relationship to him? Absolutely not. We'll say in a case like this, it's a lack of consideration. It's a lack of leniency. It's a lack of compassion. It's attributes that are not good attributes for a Muslim to have, that he caused pain or some kind of suffering to the closest of people to him. We want to remind our brothers who are married to take good care of their wives and to be, compassionate and loving to their wives, and to be concerned for what harms them and what makes them feel happy and what they deem to be romantic and exciting things romantically, and what they deem to be distracting, or what they deem to be harmful, or things which are not interesting to them. We are to be romantic husbands and think about the care, think about what excites our spouses, what makes them happy, and try our best to fulfill their desires as we like to fulfill our own desires in acts of intimacy. We are not to be selfish. And the hadith, the generality of the hadith applies. لا يؤمن أحدكم حتى يحب لأخيه ما يحب لنفسه. None of you truly believes until he loves for his brother what he loves for himself. So this applies between a man and his spouse as well. The gender is not intended in the hadith. It's not about a man and another man, but it's about any two Muslims. That a Muslim is not a believer until he prefers for that other Muslim what he prefers for himself. So you like to enjoy yourself in an act of intimacy, and you like that to be a good experience. So that should be something you like as well for others, specifically your partner, your spouse, your wife. You should want her to have a good time, and you should want her to have a time that doesn't involve pain or any agony or suffering. So this is something we should think about carefully. And perhaps there are some men who are not considering this, and they are only quoting their rights from the contract, and that they have a right to this. However, Long-term relationships don't survive like this. Long-term relationships based on compassion and love, there are two people in a relationship who are concerned for each other. So just like you would be generous and lenient and forbearing with your brother at the masjid who overstepped his boundary and he apologized, and you said, no problem, brother, and you're nice and you're lenient. So be that way with your wife. Be lenient and easy, and if there's something that's offensive, there's something that's problematic for your wife in a certain situation, requesting intimacy at a certain time is very disruptive for what she's doing, and it's causing her harm or disruption of her affairs, then be easy and be lenient, and allow yourselves another opportunity, and do not insist that it happen at this time, quoting your rights in the contract. This is my advice to those who may be in these kinds of situations. So, in brief, to summarize all of what has been said here, we should not be influenced by Western society, believing that the marriage contract does not involve any rights, like a husband having a right to intimacy with his wife when he wants it. That is a foreign concept to Islam. The idea of spousal rape is something unheard of in Islamic law. It is something even unheard of in Western law up until this recent time. They are now trying to act like it was always there. They don't want to admit that it wasn't there. They view it as a crime now. They believe that even after a person marries a wife, that his relationship with her is just like his relationship with any other woman, that he has to request permission for intimacy with her, and she has to grant that permission from the beginning and all the way throughout as well. And this marriage contract means nothing as it relates to that act of intimacy. SubhanAllah, all of these ideas are foreign to Islam. Rather, a husband, a woman is required to consider or to give in to her husband's wishes as it relates to herself, as it relates to acts of intimacy. And again, that is so long as there is no harm, no physical, psychological, or otherwise suffering or agony involved. This is what Allah Ta'ala has made easy for me to mention in this brief answer, and I hope that through what I've said there's been some kind of benefit for some of Allah's servants. هذا والله أعلم وصل اللهم وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين.